Good day, folks. Welcome to Andrew's Life. Let's get right to it. Now, I'm pretty sure most of all of you are aware of what happened a few days ago in Cincinnati, Ohio. You had the 18-year-old that he got caught stealing a vehicle, and allegedly he pointed a weapon at the authorities, and the authorities took him out of here as a result. And the father found out about what happened to his son, and within a couple of hours, the father decided to take matters into his own hands, and he decided to take one of the deputies up out of here as a result of what happened to his son. Now, I am going to play a couple of clips. One clip is going to be coming from News 12. The other clip is going to be coming from CBS, the local news stations in Cincinnati. Just so you guys have an idea of what's going on. I'm pretty sure you guys already know. I'm a little late to the party, but I was busy, making videos on other things. And honestly, I was supposed to do this video yesterday, but I chose not to because the way that I was going to do the video I feel it would have brought the wrong type of energy to this channel. And I have a very important message that I want to share, especially with the black community. And I don't want, and the way that I was going to do this video yesterday would have took away from it. So with that being said, I'm going to tell you guys right now, I am not going to tell you on this video of whom I sided with and who I think is right, who I think is wrong. I'm not going to do all that. You guys can watch the clips. You guys can go back and watch other videos that are floating around on the internet. And y'all can make your own decision of who you feel is right and who you feel is wrong. I'm not going to do all that because that's not what the video today is going to be about. So I'm going to play these clips, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to holler at y'all.
You're Rodney Hinton?
It was tense as Rodney Hinton's family sat in a sea of law enforcement officers who showed up for his bond hearing. As Hinton approached the podium, his brother comes up on the other side, tapping the glass to get his attention.
Have a seat. Have a seat.
The man refuses to listen. An officer tugs on his shirt to get him to sit down, resulting in chaos inside the gallery and spilling outside into the hall.
I just want my brother to see. Take a breather.
Deputies escorted Hinton out for 2 minutes. Once things settled down, he returned to face the judge.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
Good morning.
The prosecution called its witness, a Cincinnati police detective who laid out the tragic turn of events on May 2nd. Officer Carl Beebe says Hinton and his family met Chief Teresa Thigi at 9:30 Friday morning to review body camera footage of his son, Ryan Hinton's shooting death at the hands of one of her officers the day before. By 10:30, Hinton abruptly left the meeting distraught and so upset family members were concerned about his ability to drive.
When he left, he actually left with family members.
Beebe says Hinton returns at 12:40 that afternoon to pick up his car and leaves. At 12:49, he returns to 801 Lynn Street and circles the parking lot before allegedly heading toward UC. Roughly 10 minutes later, Hinton ran over Deputy Larry Henderson, who was directing traffic for UC's graduation. Detectives say based on video footage and witness accounts, it appeared intentional.
Were there any evidence of skid marks?
No, there were no indications at any point that he tried to brake, stop, or otherwise avoid Deputy Henderson.
The prosecution believes Hinton attacked Deputy Henderson because he was the first officer Hinton saw. His defense attorney, Clyde Bennett, argued he was not in the right state of mind.
I'm not saying that my client didn't try to intend to do this. That's not my position. I want to make certain that this young man is treated as a mentally ill person and not as a cop killer. I don't think he was a cop killer. I think he was not in his right mind.
The prosecution argued Hinton is a risk to law enforcement and the public. The judge agreed, saying he never seen a case like this, denying Hinton bond.
Rice Hill condos Thursday morning. Cincinnati officers tracked down a stolen vehicle.
As you know, we had a critical incident yesterday.
4 people get out and start running. In body cam footage released today, in just 6 seconds, police say 18-year-old Ryan Hinton aims his gun at officers.
He's got a gun.
Police shoot and kill him. Today on MLK Drive, a deputy is working traffic control for UC graduation when a driver crashes into him.
There is a connection between these two incidents. The driver of today's vehicle that struck a deputy has a family relationship with the 18-year-old that we shot yesterday.
Chief, is the person who hit the deputy the father of the person who was shot yesterday?
Yes.
Ryan Hinton's father, 38-year-old Rodney Hinton, is charged with aggravated murder in the deputy's death. He was taken to University Hospital in critical condition. Hours later, the Hamilton County Sheriff's deputy dies. The CPD homicide unit investigating both the death of the deputy killed today and the death of the 18-year-old shot by police.
I can assure you, as the chief of police for Cincinnati, I will ensure you transparency and a thorough and accurate investigation.
Hey, let's have a discussion. Now, for starters, you will never hear me say that racism does not does not exist in this country. And it does not exist in law enforcement. You will never hear me say that. So let's start there. Now, like I told you, I'm not gonna tell you, I'm not gonna share with you who I think is right, who I think is wrong. But this is what I will do. I mean, I think there's a conversation that we need to have as a black community especially. I mean, like, what I want to do right now is I want to address the bigger elephant in the room. And that is, what was that young man, and I'm talking about the 18-year-old, what was that 18-year-old doing with somebody else's vehicle in the first place? Why was he out here stealing vehicles in the first place? That's the very first question that we all need to ask ourselves about this story. Now, we can sit around and talk about systemic racism, and we can talk about who was right, who was wrong, and everything else. But what I want to do is I want to address the bigger elephant in the room. Because you know, the only way that the black community is going to truly be able to move forward and do better is if we address these type of situations the way that they're supposed to be addressed. Now, here's the thing. 9.9 times out of 10, that 18-year-old, the one who, you know, the son or the father who was taken out of here by deputies, that 18-year-old, I am very confident that he has most likely been committing other type of crimes way before he got caught with that stolen vehicle. Now, there's a chance that I could be wrong, and maybe the very first crime that he committed was stealing that vehicle, which I don't believe, I doubt it. Because most people that are not criminals, they're not going to go from doing nothing, committing no crime at all, to all of a sudden they're going to steal somebody's vehicle. Typically, that doesn't happen. Typically, you know, most criminals, they commit little small crimes. And those little small crimes, typically, you know, the more confidence they build in committing the crime and getting away with it, the bigger the crime gets. And when they get away with that crime, it gets a little bigger, so on and so forth. All the way it gets to the point where they do something serious and now they're going to be jammed up for the next 20 years or whatever the case might be. And I'm thinking that's most likely what happened to that young man that got caught stealing a car. And I'm also thinking that his parents knew about what he was doing his parents knew about the type of company that he was keeping. And for whatever reason, they either A, didn't do anything about it, or B, if they did something about it, they didn't do enough. And I would say as a result of the parents' actions or the lack thereof is the reason why that all this transpired. Because see, one thing that the black community needs to do a better job of is to accept accountability. Like for those of you that got kids, especially if you got sons. Now we all know about the racism that goes on in law enforcement. We all know that there's racism in this country. It's alive and active, unfortunately. Which is more the reason why, in the black community especially, for those of you that are raising kids, that are raising children, whenever your kid does something wrong, you gotta nip that in the bud right away. Forget trying to be their friend. Forget trying to be nice. I mean, if you got people that you call your friends or even your other family members, if they tell you, you too white because you want to make your kid write a essay for doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. Oh man, white people punish their kids for whatever. You know what? I'm pretty sure that some of you in the black community, you got those people in your circle, whether they're your family, they're your friends, or whatever the case might be, that might say some crazy stuff like that. And what I would say to y'all is you need to ignore it. Because the future of your child is going to depend on you parents out here. So, yeah, in the black community, we need to do a far better job at accountability. We need to have it to where these kids won't even become a statistic. Like that 18-year-old, if he wasn't out here stealing cars in the first place, none of what happened would have happened in the first place. Now I know some of you are in your feelings right about now, and you're probably thinking, oh man, this dude crazy, he a Sambo, he an Uncle Tom, whatever. Cool, that's cool. But the truth needs to be told. Like, I'm going to use myself as an example. Now, I look at myself, and I could have easily went down the same path that young man went down. I could have easily been a statistic and been sitting in prison right about now. But I wasn't, because my parents, whenever I did something I shouldn't have been doing, they held me accountable. My parents, they held themselves accountable when it came to raising us. So, due to that combination, that's the reason why I'm sitting in front of a camera making videos, as opposed to sitting in front of a glass window talking to my loved ones through some glass and a telephone in prison or at jail. And I'm going to tell you guys a story about myself. And then we're going to continue the conversation. Now, back when I was 11 years old, I started a path of what you would call criminal behavior. You see, this is what I did. And I did this from 11 to 12. I would say I did this for like a year and a half, give or take, before I finally got caught and got in trouble. I used to steal. I stole like the local there's like a couple of local grocery stores that I would go to a couple of times a week to either A, maybe pick up stuff for my parents, or B, I would go and pick up stuff for myself. I had a big sweet tooth, so I ate a lot of sweets. I bought a lot of junk food. I had a paper route, so I was able to afford that. And a lot of times I would steal stuff that either A, I could fit in my paper bag, like my paper route bag. Like for an example, I might steal like some candy bars and I'll put in my paper bag. And what I would do is I might take maybe 2 or 3 papers, shove the candy in it, and then put the papers on top. That way they didn't see me. Because at the time, I thought I was slick. I thought I was onto something. Other times, I might take an item and I might put it in my pant leg. Again, I thought I was onto something. I thought I was slick. Now, and then what I would do is I would take other items, shove them in the cart, and then I would proceed to go to checkout and actually pay for the stuff that was in the cart. And then I would walk off. Then I would walk out of the store with the stuff that I didn't pay for. Obviously, I stole. And with the stuff that I stole, I mean, some of it I consumed, and some of it I took it to my school and I sold it to other students, and I made some pretty good money. But a year and a half into what I was doing, I finally got caught. When I got caught, somebody at the store knew my parents because they knew my sister. They went to school together. This person was a few years older than me. He is my sister's age. So they were gonna call the authorities, but they decided to call my parents instead. Now, honestly, rather they would have called my parents or the authorities, I would have been scared shitless no matter what. But anyways, they called my parents. Parents came down to the store, and they talked to the store detectives that caught me, and I had to sign a couple of things. They had to sign a couple of things, and then from the time that I walked out of the store with my parents, all the way till we got to the car, nothing but dead silence. When we got in the car, still nothing but silence. And then finally, when we pull up in the driveway, my dad starts yelling at me. And he told me, you need to get your butt upstairs to your room immediately. Well, he didn't say it quite like that. He used some choice words because he was pissed off. So he told me I need to get upstairs to my room immediately. So I did. And then my dad came up and he continued to yell at me. And my mom, she yelled at me a little bit, but then she started crying. Because my dad was like, I didn't raise no thief. I'm not raising no thief. You see, in this house, we don't steal. And then he proceeded to tell me, you realize now, they could have called the cops and you could have been in handcuffs in the back of a police car. And then he told me, you realize now, if you would have been a few years older, you could have been in jail for this. You could have been in front of a judge. So anyways, make a long story short, they grounded me for a couple of weeks. And during that time I was grounded, I could do nothing but go to school and do my paper. Other than that, I couldn't hang out with none of my friends. I was grounded to my room. And while I was grounded, I had to write a letter to the store apologizing for the stuff that I stole. And my parents made me do stuff for my neighbors. Like, I had to, since this all happened during I think it was during the late spring, early summer, I had to mow grass for a couple of my neighbors. And the money that my neighbors paid, I had to take that money and give it to my parents. And then my parents gave that money to charity because my parents that's going to be your punishment. Because I asked my parents, well, if I'm cutting their grass and they're paying me the money, how come I can't keep that money and put it in my savings account? My parents well, that's not the point. This is your punishment. So, yeah, I had to give the money I earned from cutting grass all to my parents, and my parents donated that money to charity. And so I think I cut grass for 4 days during the 2 weeks I was grounded, Saturday and Sunday for each week. Plus I had to write that little letter to the store. So, and also during this time, of course, my mom, she told my brother, and then my brother, he came to my room, he started, he basically reminded me how badly I done messed up, and I did some stuff I had no business doing. And let me back up for a minute. Now, the employee at the store that I stole from that knew my sister because they went to school together, He knew my parents too. He looked at me and he basically told me how badly I done messed up. So, back in the 90s, when you got caught stealing, the community shamed you. You didn't. There was no badge of. There was no pride at all. It's not like today. Okay, you got some of these kids that steal, and now they're online bragging about it. No. Back in the day, at least back in the community that I grew up in, if a youngster got caught stealing, like I got caught stealing, everybody in your circle, in the community, shames you in one way or another. So it was crystal clear that you done messed up. Crystal clear you done messed up. And nobody within the community that you resided in was going to allow you to take any amount of pride in breaking the law, basically, because that's basically what I did. I stole. So, okay, well, some people would have thought, okay, well, I learned my lesson. Well, guess what? I learned it for a couple of years. A couple of years later, I got greedy again. It was around Christmas time. I had a customer give me a Christmas tip. And what I did was I bounced this customer's check because there was a stereo system I wanted to buy. But I didn't quite have the funds to buy that stereo. And I wouldn't have had the funds to buy that stereo for another month. Well, I didn't want to wait a month. I wanted to buy that sucker right now, like right away. So my customer gave me a check, and I bounced that check. See, what I did was I turned that check into something a lot larger. Like what I did was I thought I was being slick. So what I did was I would take the same color ink as an ink my customer used, and I would try my damnedest to match her handwriting just so it didn't look suspicious. So I bounced the check, thinking I was slick. And then I was able to go ahead and buy that stereo because I had all that money. Well, a couple of weeks after I bought the stereo, I was in my room having a good time playing my music. And my parents marched up to my room. My mom, she banging up on the door. I'm opening up the door, and it's like, yeah, Mom. And my mom's like, unplug that stereo system right now. She was yelling off the top of her head, off the top of her lungs. Unplug it right now. So I did. That's like, what's going on? And then she's like, get out of my way. I'm taking this thing out of your room. And then she told me what happened. Well, rather, she told me I was caught, bouncing my customer's check. Because remember, I had a paper out at this time. So what happened was my mom, she took the stereo out of my room, and then she told me that I am going to be grounded to my room for the rest of the evening. Well, and she also told me that when my dad comes home from work, I'm going to have to tell him what I did. So I started getting nervous because, me growing up in a two-parent home, my dad held it down. He wasn't one of these weak fathers that let their kid do whatever the hell they wanted to do. No, my father wasn't playing that shit. So anyways, my father came home maybe like an hour and a half later or so. I was super nervous. My heart was pounding out my chest. It's crazy. So I heard my parents talk to each other. And then my mom's like, hey, you need to go upstairs to Andrew's room. Andrew's got something to tell you. So my father, he came to the room. He's like, son, you got something to tell me. It's like, yes, I do. And then I told him what I did. I got caught bouncing one of my customers' checks so I can buy the stereo system. So my father, he went in on me. He started yelling at me. He was yelling at me for a good 10 minutes. And he was telling me, you could have been in front of the judge for this. You could have been, if you would have been a little older, you could have been locked up in jail for this. And he yelled at me for 10 minutes. And then once again, he told me, I thought you learned your lesson the last time you got caught stealing something. Apparently not. Apparently you're a thief. I done told you last time I don't raise a thief. I don't raise criminals. And those were his words. So he was like, so you're going to be a criminal when you get older? Am I going to see you in jail one day? And then in a real soft voice, I told him no. And then it's like, well, it doesn't look like it. It looks like I'm going to see you in jail one day. So he finally left the room. And then, to make a long story short, this time I was grounded for 3 weeks. And during the 3 weeks I was grounded, for starters, my mom, she made me go out and do yard work for a few of my neighbors to raise the money to pay to pay my customer back, because I bounced out my customer's check. Excuse me, people. So anyways, my mom, she made me go out and raise the money that I basically stole. So during the 3 weeks I was grounded, on the weekends when I wasn't in school, I had to do yard work for a few of my neighbors so I can pay my customer back that money. And then in addition to that, my mom was like, well, you got to do your charity work too. So I looked at her, I was like, what are you talking about? And then she's like, well, you got to earn X amount of money to give to charity, because, that's going to be part of your punishment. So okay. So I had to do additional work to raise money for my parents to donate that money to charity. So, and on top of that, I didn't get my stereo back for a month. So a week after I was ungrounded, my parents told me, you're not getting your stereo back for an additional week, because we really need you to understand what you did and how badly you done messed up, and how serious of I forgot what they said, but basically how serious of a crime that I committed. And that if I would have been a little older, I could have been in jail in front of a judge for all of it. So, okay, I finally got my stereo back. Oh, and by the way, I also had to write a letter to the customer that I stole from, and basically apologizing for what I did. And I think I told you this, but when I stole from the grocery store, I had to write them a letter apologizing for what I stole. But anyways, moving forward. So after I got punished that second time for bouncing a check, I made a decision in my mind. It's like, man, I'm not going to steal a damn thing ever in my life again. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I mean, my parents done a fine job at showing me what could happen if I choose to continue the path of being a criminal. If I choose to continue the path of being a criminal, my parents showed me what could happen. And that scared the shit out of me, I'm not going to lie. Because even though I was young, I knew I didn't want to be in jail. I knew that for a fact. So, from that day on forward, the idea of stealing anybody's stuff, I don't care how big, I don't care how small, I don't care if there's people watching, I don't care if there's nobody watching. It was no longer a thought that I had in my mind. And I knew from that day on forward, whatever I want, I'm going to earn it. If I don't have the money, I don't get it. It is what it is. And obviously, I wasn't bouncing no more checks either. Because with the combination of my parents disciplining me the way that they were supposed to, and the community that I lived in shaming me for what I did, to me, it just wasn't worth it. Now, so when I look at what happened in Cincinnati to that 18-year-old, I'm thinking that 18-year-old, most likely, his parents knew what he was doing. His parents knew that he was hanging around bad people. His parents most likely knew that he was doing bad things. And rather than his parents doing something about it, his parents either A, they didn't do anything at all, or whatever they did, they didn't do enough. And now as a result, you have a young man that lost his life. He had his whole life ahead of him, but he lost his life, unfortunately. Now, as far as the father is concerned, I mean, for starters, I can't even imagine what it's like for a parent to lose their son like that. It's terrible. And on that regard, my heart goes out to the father. However, do I agree with what the father did to that deputy? Not at all. And I'll tell you why. I don't agree with what the father did because, for starters, the deputy that he ran over had nothing to do with the death of his son. And remember, if his son wouldn't have been stealing vehicles in the first place, none of this would have happened in the first place. Secondly, the father neglected to think about the rest of his family. Because now that the father did what he did to that deputy, the father is going to most likely spend the rest of his natural life in prison. Most likely he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. Now, so during the time that he's going to be slowly rotting away in prison, who's going to look after his family? Nobody. Now, I'm pretty sure at some point his wife will probably remarry. Maybe she won't. I don't know. But the point of the matter is, the father left his family vulnerable due to his own actions. He left his family. He left his family vulnerable. That family now has no father. I mean, his wife has no husband. If he's got other children, they have no father because now he's locked up. So those are the reasons why I disagree with the actions that the father took. Because, you see, in the black community, there comes a point where we need to improve on accountability. And secondly, we need to kind of chill out a little bit when it comes to our emotions. I mean, I know that's easier said than done. I get it. But we really need to chill out a little bit when it comes to our emotions and start thinking a little bit more collectively. Start, use a little bit of logic, Now, I know some of you think I'm a terrible person for saying what I said, but I'm saying what I say because I genuinely don't want anybody, especially young black men out here doing stupid stuff, and either A, their life is cut short, or B, they're spending the next 20, 30 years incarcerated, being a statistic basically. I genuinely want every young person, regardless of race, to have the same blessings I've had. Be raised by good parents, and then when you get older, you get to make decisions for yourself. You get to choose how you desire to live your life. You're not going to be locked up. You're not going to be 6 feet deep because you done did some dumbass shit out here. Because when you was younger, your parents most likely didn't hold you accountable. Because your parents didn't hold themselves accountable. That's why I'm making this video today. And again, I don't mean to... And this is the reason why I didn't want to go into any detail of who I think is right and who I think is wrong in regards to what happened to the young man that got caught stealing the car. Because I mean, as a black man, this message was on my heart and it needed to be said. Because I get so sick and tired of young men, especially black men, getting their life cut short, becoming a statistic, because they out here wilding out, and none of the elders in their family or even in the community are bothering to hold them accountable. I get sick of that shit. And due to the lack of accountability that oftentimes plagues the black community, I'm gonna keep it all the way real. That is also one of the big reasons why many blacks who have an extra few dollars will hurry up and leave the black community never to return. That is the reason, also the reason why that many of your black celebrities, many of your blacks that got money that can change the black community economically, they choose not to, because if they don't feel safe in their community, if they don't feel that they can safely raise their family in that community, they're not going to invest in it. I mean, that's just how that goes. Whether you agree or disagree, that's just how it goes. So I would say the black community needs to do a better job at accepting accountability, at holding, each other accountable, holding yourselves accountable. We need to do a better job at that, collectively speaking. And until we do, sadly, stories like what happened in Cincinnati are going to continue to play itself out time and time again within the community. So that's all I got for you guys. I know the video was long, but it was important that I put it out. Hopefully you guys got the message. And my condolences goes out to everybody that was affected. And I mean everybody. Anyone that lost a loved one, my heart goes out to all of them. So that's all I got for this one. Stay blessed.
Ohio law enforcement just got a big apology from GoFundMe. The online fundraising platform issued a statement after campaigns supporting Rodney Hinton Jr. racked up donations over the weekend. WCPO 9 News reporter Valerie Lyons spoke with the local Fraternal Order of Police, who say GoFundMe did the right thing.
There was outrage.
Cincinnati's FOP president is talking about these. More than a dozen fundraisers for a man accused of intentionally killing a deputy. They started popping up on GoFundMe Saturday.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
Not long after Rodney Hinton Jr. made his first court appearance.
You've got officers, community members that are trying to process the fact that we've had a deputy murdered, only to see that somebody's trying to raise money for somebody that's accused of killing a cop.
But during my interview with Ken Kober Tuesday, we spoke about the fundraisers in the past tense. That's because now they're nowhere to be found. It took this to make it happen, a letter from the president of Ohio FOP demanding GoFundMe remove the fundraisers. It reads in part, "This is absolutely outrageous to fundraise off the assassination of a law enforcement officer." Hours later, GoFundMe responded with a letter of their own. Were you pleased to see the quick response?
Absolutely. I was more than appreciative to see not only did they take it down, but they said, listen, we're sorry that this happened to this deputy, and they give their condolences.
Kober received that same apology letter. It explained fundraisers like those supporting Hinton are prohibited. Raising money for people charged with violent crimes violates GoFundMe's policy.
I would hope that they would be able to create some kind of algorithm that would be able to catch these before they even actually go live. But that's something for them to figure out ultimately.
GoFundMe says any money raised for Rodney Hinton Jr.'s legal fund will be fully refunded to those who donated. The platform did a similar thing for campaigns supporting Luigi Mangione, the man accused of gunning down United Healthcare's CEO. In the newsroom, Valerie Lyons, WCPO 9 News.